I've actually got a report here that I think is really interesting that I've been wanting to talk about on the channel for a minute. It's actually by a big Richmond fan page on Instagram called Tiger Faithful, and he or she, gender equality, I don't know. I don't know, the gender of this person has never been revealed. Tiger Faithful has been posting a lot about potential Richmond trades, all of the above. And there's one really interesting here that says Sheldrick the Tiger. Richmond are rumoured to be very interested in Sydney young gun Angus Sheldrick. The West Australian native was taken at pick 18 in the 2021 draft, but has struggled to cement a spot in Sydney's star-studded midfield group. Goes on to say, his best game this year was against Melbourne, where he had 26 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 5 clearances and 5 tackles. He's been made to toil away at VFL level and has put up 6 games over 34 disposals or more in the last 2 years, which is pretty crazy. He's out of contract at the end of the year, and I think we'd be able to get him for quite cheaply. We need competition for spots in the middle, and I think he could be a really valuable player for us. What do you think? Future second or third probably gets it done. Now, hear me out real quick. Scrap that noise on any pick. I actually think there's a player that Richmond could do here. If they really do want Angus Sheldrick, they could do a player for player swap. Again, we never see that in the AFL anymore. We never see player for player swaps, but I actually have a really good one. And there is a player on Richmond right now who I think will be getting a lot of interest in the off-season, and that does happen to be Jacob Blight. Again, as most of you know who are Richmond fans, Jacob Blight is really out of favour at Richmond right now for not a whole lot of reasons. We don't really know why. Again, when a player is often getting dropped, you can usually tell why. Like, there's like one little thing about them that you can be like, yeah, that's not AFL level. Like, you look at Noah Cumberland, and he was getting dropped every second week, and even though he'd kick goals and look okay, you realize his defensive pressure was absolutely terrible, and he wouldn't put on any pressure. He'd be like a training cone out there, and it's why he got dropped all the time. But Jacob Blight, I'm convinced Jacob Blight is only getting dropped because Richmond's backline is actually really good. Again, don't get me wrong, Richmond's backline at the moment is absolutely getting killed, and it's getting like 150 points scored on them every week. But the reality is that the first like 10 weeks of the season when Richmond actually looked okay, it was because their backline was a clear top 8 in the AFL. The issue was Richmond got a ton of injuries, the list competition spots became bad, the midfield gave up, the forward line proved its age of everyone being an average of 19 years old, and the back line got constantly under pressure every game to now they just, again, it's way too hard for them to keep up, and they're getting 150s dropped on them every week. The reality is Richmond's back line, though, when everything is going right, is a top 8 in the league. It's the only good thing about Richmond right now, and it's the only thing that's not an average of like 18 years old. So Richmond's backline is really good for the most part. Jacob Blight, there are guys in the backline that are just doing more than what Jacob Blight does and are just more ready and have had more opportunity. Like, you can't really drop Ben Miller over Blight. You can't really drop a lot of those guys over Blight. But there are so many teams out there right now who are desperate for a key defender and desperate for a young one. And I think Sydney, they would absolutely love Jacob Blight. He'd be in their 22 every single week easily. And I think a really good player swap would be if Richmond said, look, we'll give you Jacob Blight and we'll bring in Angus Sheldrick. You guys need backline players and we need some midfield depth and competition in the list so we don't keep getting beaten by 150 and every player is on their best ability. Again, I'm not going to lie. I know Angus Sheldrick's a good player. I don't really know a whole lot about him though. And the reason that is because we haven't seen a whole lot about him. But the reality is just because you haven't seen a whole lot about a player doesn't mean there aren't a lot of things about them that they're doing right now that are probably considered very, very good. Again, you look at one that I really like to talk about all the time. Pat Lipinski, right? He was not getting a game in the Western Bulldogs team, and there was probably 1 or 2 things he needed to improve about his game to play AFL. Collingwood saw he had the fundamentals, They traded him in, and now Pat Lipinski is arguably the most underrated player in the league and is one of the best inside forward 50 kicks in the whole entire league. There are going to be players like that I guarantee you I think Richmond will look at this offseason. Angus Sheldrick, I think he'll be one. The reality is, though, is that Richmond have to be very careful because I think there won't be too much movement over this offseason. But the thing is, we are guaranteed to draft 3 players. Pick 2, pick 3, and Callaway as a father-son. And that's probably all you need for this year. But again, there's going to be players that get delisted. I think Bauer will unfortunately be moved on. Again, he just did his ACL. He's out of contract. I don't think they're going to bring him back. Jacob Blight, as I just said, I think will probably get traded, as he looks for more opportunity. There might be another player or two. There's been rumors as of late that Jaden Short, other teams are circling around him a little bit after he, again, has kind of struggled to get back in this team and is only getting in really now because Richmond are terrible at the moment. Again, I think, teams will look at him and ask the question. There'll be other players that Richmond for sure delist as well. Richmond could still look to bring in a player or two. I'm looking at Angus Sheldrick. He's definitely one. I'm looking at a guy like Elijah Sardis who, again, just can't get a gig at Essendon at the moment, but would still be good to add midfield competition. There'll be a couple players here that I think the Tigers will look at. And yeah, I personally think, in my opinion, the Angus Sheldrick, Jacob Blight, just, trade them for each other. I think that really does get it done. So I'm for sure interested to see how this, does unfold. This is the first player I think that Richmond have been really linked to so far this off-season. So far this season going into the off-season. Richmond really haven't been linked to anyone at all other than like Harley Reid, and from all reports Harley Reid is staying, and yeah, you hear all these teams being interested in all these players, and Richmond just really haven't been linked to anyone. But I also think the reason we haven't been linked to anyone is because a lot of the players we're probably going to be looking at are like players who just aren't getting an opportunity in the AFL that Richmond could see little things in. I would imagine this is probably being kept really under wraps on who they're interested in. So I'm very interested to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this comment section down below. What do you guys think about, these AFL trades? And should Richmond do a trade that is Jacob Blight for Angus Sheldrick? Could you see something like that happening? Could you see them looking at a guy like Elijah Sardis, whatever it's going to be? Again, I'd very much like to know your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Leave a like on the video to let me know you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel for the latest AFL content, AFL news, all of the above. Go and subscribe to my, gaming/movie channel, which will be getting linked down below as well. And I guess I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.